My uncle, flushed with alcohol, echoed words that cut deeper than any knife. His sentiments found harmony in the nods and murmurs of agreement from the other men gathered around. Emboldened by the chorus of support, my husband unleashed a torrent of criticism, each word hitting its mark with precision. His satisfaction gleamed in his eyes as he reveled in the validation of his peers. I forced a calm facade, swallowing my humiliation and rage with each breath. Then, just as tension reached its peak, my mother-in-law rose from her seat, her gaze a force to be reckoned with. "Is that truly all you have to offer?" Her words pierced the heavy air, silencing the room in an instant. "My name is Emma, and I'm a 40-year-old woman working in a medical office. I met Tom, my husband, a man 4 years my senior, through our shared love of tennis. We've been married for 13 years. Though we both longed for children, fate had other plans, leaving a bittersweet ache between us. My in-laws, who live separately, keep a vigilant eye on us, especially my mother-in-law. Our bond is strong. We often enjoy lunches out and shopping trips together. Losing my mother at a young age made my mother-in-law's presence all the more significant. She embraced me with a mother's love, cherishing me as if I were her own flesh and blood. While our marriage initially thrived, over time, my husband's demeanor shifted. After about a decade, he became increasingly domineering. His once gentle kindness toward me evaporated. Moreover, his workload burgeoned, leading to frequent overtime and business trips. 3 years ago, he was reassigned to a different department, exacerbating our disconnect. He now spends half the week away from home. Upon his sporadic returns, his demands are curt and dismissive. "Dinner," he barks, or "Is the bath ready yet?" treating me as if I were merely a servant. Fed up, I once dared to voice my grievances. "You're not a child anymore. You should at least handle your own clothes," I protested. His response was chilling. "What nonsense is this? Your role is to obey me as your husband. Don't complain, you're my wife." For what felt like an eternity, my husband's accusatory finger jabbed the air, his voice rising in a crescendo of abuse. This ritual of verbal assault would replay whenever his mood soared, a relentless cycle I couldn't escape. His incessant nagging and troublesome behavior left me no choice but to acquiesce. Sitting at the dinner table one evening, I faced yet another onslaught of criticism. More vegetables again. Am I supposed to eat like a rabbit now? Get some meat on the table. You know your cholesterol's high. Reluctantly, I resolved to reduce the meat intake. But before I could speak, he rose abruptly, flinging the meal I had prepared onto the floor. "No one knows my body better than me. I'll eat out," I declared, but my words fell on deaf ears as he stormed out, wallet and phone in hand, slamming the door behind him. Every day, I scoured the internet for low-salt, low-meat recipes, desperate to accommodate his high cholesterol flagged in his company's medical checkup. Yet despite my efforts, it all seemed in vain. As I stooped to clean up the mess on the floor, a wave of desolation washed over me. 3 hours later, my husband returned, his tune merry, his senses dulled by alcohol. In resignation, I retrieved his coat from where he carelessly flung it, only to catch a whiff of grilled meat mingled with a perfume unfamiliar to me. Doubts that had lingered in the shadows of my mind surfaced with renewed intensity. I had suspected infidelity in the past, but lacking concrete evidence, I chose to suppress my concerns. Yet the distinct scent of that perfume fueled my suspicions like never before. From then on, whenever my husband's temper flared, he would vanish without explanation, returning home only to rush into the shower. Each time, the telltale fragrance lingered in the air, a haunting reminder that something was amiss. Soon, his careless whistling in the shower would be silenced unless I confronted the truth lurking within his coat. Bolstered by my growing conviction of his infidelity, I resolved to gather evidence to confront him. 3 weeks later, on New Year's Day, we made our customary visit to my in-laws' home, where relatives congregated for the annual celebration. The table was adorned with a feast prepared lovingly by my mother-in-law, a colorful array tempting the senses. Amid greetings exchanged and well wishes shared, my husband's discontent simmered just beneath the surface. "Don't hold back, Emma. Dig in," my mother-in-law encouraged, to which I gratefully replied. Yet my husband's gaze bored into me with disapproval as I savored the meal, appreciating the effort put forth by his mother. "Where are the chopsticks?" His voice pierced the air, breaking the harmony of the gathering. Hastily, I fetched them from the kitchen, presented them to him, only to be met with another demand. "And the cups?" he queried, his irritation palpable. Shouldn't she anticipate these things without being asked? You need to be more attentive to your surroundings, he chided, his words like barbs aimed at my every move. Despite the presence of our extended family, my husband's verbal assaults persisted. I'm not a mind reader. You have to communicate with me, he insisted, his tone cutting through the festive atmosphere. Suppressing my frustration, I handed him a glass, which he accepted with a charming smile as he sipped the sake poured by our relatives. Would you care for a drink, Emma? My uncle kindly offered, but my husband interjected, she's on chauffeur duty today, dismissing the gesture. Meanwhile, my mother-in-law and the other women toiled away in the kitchen, preparing lunch and attending to the needs of the men. Donning an apron I brought from home, I joined the flurry of activity, working tirelessly alongside them, while my father-in-law and the other men reveled in their merriment, consuming one bottle of sake after another. The sounds of their boisterous laughter filled the air. Expressing her sympathy for our busyness, my mother-in-law interrupted our tasks to offer us a respite, serving steaming cups of tea. As we sat together, engaging in light conversation, my husband's voice echoed from the living room, a reminder of the tension simmering just beyond our temporary sanctuary. Let's spice things up with some honesty, shall we? A little stress relief for the new year, my husband proposed to the delight of the gathered guests. The loser of a round of rock, paper, scissors gets to spill the beans, he declared, his words slurred from alcohol. That sounds like a riot, my mother-in-law chimed in, her interest piqued. Little did she know, I had my own agenda for this New Year's Eve gathering. As the game commenced with enthusiastic shouts, I seized the opportunity presented by my husband's unexpected suggestion. Retrieving something from my bag, I discreetly tucked it into my apron pocket. Amidst the raucous game, the losers vented their frustrations about work and bosses, met with sympathetic nods and murmurs of agreement. It's all too true, the chorus of listeners echoed. Finally, it was my husband's turn to air his grievances, having lost the game of rock, paper, scissors. Anticipation and anxiety knotted in my stomach as I awaited his revelations. My complaint is that my wife lacks attractiveness, and her cooking leaves much to be desired. My husband's words struck me like a bolt of lightning, leaving me reeling in shock. My father-in-law, clearly uncomfortable, hastily cleared his throat. But when you two tied the knot, you couldn't stop praising her beauty and culinary skills, he interjected, attempting to diffuse the tension. That was ages ago, Dad. Nowadays, she serves up bland dishes filled with nothing but leaves like rabbit food. My uncle's demeanor darkened at the revelation. It's unacceptable. As his wife, she should step up her game. His sentiments found resonance among the men present. Unbeknownst to them, I had dedicated countless hours pondering my husband's health and meticulously planning our meals. Yet their words flowed freely, oblivious to my efforts. Overwhelmed by a cocktail of embarrassment and fury, I longed to escape. As the conversation shifted to complaints about wives, my husband led the charge. I toil away every day, yet my allowance remains unchanged. Stop your griping and obey me, my father-in-law chuckled in agreement, while the wives, downtrodden, remained silent. Then it was my husband's turn once more. Everyone else is blessed with children, he declared, but my wife is defective, incapable of bearing offspring. His callous words pierced me to the core, shattering the illusion of our marriage. The ache of unfulfilled dreams and the sting of betrayal weighed heavy on my heart, drowning me in a sea of sorrow and frustration. I inhaled deeply, willing the tears threatening to spill over to retreat. It'll all work out, Emma. My mother-in-law's gentle grip on my hand offered a modicum of comfort. With a heavy sigh, she rose from her seat, her countenance dark with a resolve I hadn't witnessed before. Is that all you've got to say? Her unexpected outburst jolted the men, accustomed to her usual gentle demeanor. The once vibrant atmosphere fell into an uneasy silence. Come on now, let's not ruin the fun, my father-in-law attempted to diffuse the tension, addressing my mother-in-law. Fun? Are you the only ones enjoying yourselves here? You should have put a stop to this. My mother-in-law's voice trembled with righteous indignation. Shame on you, speaking to her like that, labeling her defective. How dare you? She continued, her gaze piercing. Yes, she's right. My father-in-law's troubled expression betrayed his discomfort as he averted his eyes. We all have grievances to air, he conceded. Exactly. The women, previously silent, erupted in support, their applause ringing through the room. Let's not hold back. Speak your mind, and we'll all feel better. The words of my mother-in-law ignited a cascade of truth from the women, each expressing their grievances with newfound courage. If you want more allowance, then earn more. Why not take initiative instead of expecting us to cater to your every need? They demanded, their voices ringing with determination. As the wives confronted their husbands with precise criticisms, the men faltered, offering apologies in succession. Only my husband remained unmoved, his indifference palpable. "Why should I apologize for speaking the truth?" he retorted, locking eyes with Noah in a tense exchange. "I refuse to apologize, and I'll say it again. She's unattractive, a terrible cook, and incapable of bearing children." My husband's accusatory finger pointed squarely at me, each word a dagger to my heart. The dam of sorrow and frustration I had meticulously held in check finally burst, giving way to a tidal wave of rage. "You have no right to speak to me like that," I confronted my husband with a measured tone, my hand discreetly gripping the cell phone hidden in my apron pocket. "It's unfair that you're the only one allowed to vent. I have grievances too, you know, and you wouldn't object, would you? You've aired your complaints about me plenty of times. I'd welcome appreciation, but not baseless accusations." With a deliberate motion, I withdrew an envelope from my pocket, scattering its contents across the table where our relatives sat. The photographs revealed damning evidence: my husband entering a hotel room with another woman, then exiting her apartment, hand in hand. Bolstered by my suspicions, I had discreetly installed a GPS tracker in his car, providing irrefutable proof of his infidelity. Originally intended for a private discussion with my mother-in-law, the situation demanded immediate action. Guests filled the room as the truth unfolded, disrupting the once jovial atmosphere. Frantically, my husband attempted to gather the incriminating photos. "Isn't it normal for husbands to stray?" He appealed to the men for validation, but his plea fell on deaf ears. No one in the room offered agreement, leaving him isolated in his deceit. As my uncle, once a supporter of my husband, denounced infidelity with a resounding "No, that's unforgivable," the other men nodded in solemn agreement. Yet my husband remained defiant. "You lot couldn't even dare to stray from your wives," he taunted, his laughter hollow and bitter. My uncle, spurred into action by my husband's audacity, rose from his seat. "Who truly bears the shame here?" he challenged, echoed by murmurs of concurrence from the men, their gazes piercing through my husband's facade. Despite his attempts to maintain a facade of strength and righteousness, my husband's demeanor reeked of desperation, leaving me repulsed by his arrogance. With resolve, I confronted him once more, armed with further evidence. "A week ago, I received a call from Maruka-san, your newfound love," I revealed, each word laden with the weight of betrayal. "She claimed you've been seeing each other for 3 years now." My husband's feeble attempts at denial only served to betray his guilt. "She even mentioned your subordinate, and the fact that she's 7 months pregnant," I continued, unmasking the deceit woven into his web of lies. "She pleaded for a divorce, stating that you refused to acknowledge the child." Fearing my reaction, his protests dissolved into stammered excuses as I extracted my phone from my apron pocket, placing it on speaker for all to hear. "Maruka-san, did you hear what I just said?" I asked, my voice trembling with a mixture of anger and sorrow. Through stifled sobs, her response came quietly but unmistakably. "Yes," she confirmed, her words carrying the weight of truth, shattering the illusion my husband had meticulously constructed. In fact, the day before New Year's, I had reached out to the girl, informing her of my intentions to call her the next day. Seeking insight into my husband's true intentions, she had agreed, and thus, I made the call just before confronting him. Overhearing the conversation, she was overcome with tears and fury. "He told me to wait until our divorce is finalized," she lamented, her voice trembling with betrayal. "I never uttered such words. Surely, as my wife, you understand, don't you? Why would I say such a thing? You're the one who betrayed me," my husband countered, his gaze falling to the ground in shame. "I'll never forgive you," she declared before abruptly ending the call, her trust in my husband shattered. Presenting the divorce papers I had prepared, I demanded his signature, only to be met with a storm of fury. "Absolutely not. I can't simply sign this on a whim. How dare you, sis? Besides, after all this, you'll owe me 2 million yen in alimony." "No, I refuse to divorce you. I simply don't have that kind of money," he protested, his demeanor devolving into childish petulance as he stamped his feet in protest. Witnessing my husband's unprecedented display of immaturity, I merely chuckled, but remained resolute in my demand for divorce and alimony. Tom, you're not a child. It's shameful. My mother-in-law's frustration with his pitiful behavior was evident as she scolded him with an exasperated expression. You can't just refuse divorce and alimony. Face reality with dignity. I pressed on, my tone unwavering. It's not that simple, Mom. Dad, you understand how I feel, right? My husband appealed, seeking validation. Absolutely not. I can't condone your actions. My father-in-law's response was firm, leaving my husband with little recourse. Reluctantly, he signed the divorce papers and agreed to the alimony, his tears held back only by sheer willpower. Believing this gathering to be the opportune moment to expose my husband's infidelity, I pushed him further. Oh, by the way, I've terminated our lease at the end of the month. One home should suffice for you, shouldn't it? My words were met with applause from the women and deep sighs from the men, and my husband left my in-laws' house, seemingly fleeing from the attention of everyone present. The next day, they filed for divorce at the city office and relocated to a rental apartment I had already arranged. Additionally, I sought 1.5 million yen in alimony from my ex-husband's unfaithful partner. It would have been a harsh blow for the girl, having quit her job upon learning of her pregnancy. But forgiveness was out of the question. After losing his apartment, my ex-husband sought refuge with the girl. Promptly, he acknowledged paternity upon divorce. However, she eventually severed ties, demanding 1.5 million yen per month in child support. Moreover, my ex-husband resigned from his job following the scandal's exposure, making it untenable for him to continue with the company. Left abandoned by his parents and unable to secure a new job, my ex-husband resorted to sleeping in internet cafes and juggling part-time gigs to meet his alimony obligations. Susan, my former mother-in-law, confided in me about his deteriorating health, citing elevated cholesterol levels and the toll his self-indulgent lifestyle had taken since our divorce. Interestingly, Susan and I forged an unexpected friendship post-divorce, growing closer than ever before. Now I find solace in the tranquility of my life, relishing the peace that comes with solitude.
My in-laws left my mute and bedridden sister-in-law with me and went on vacation to Hawaii. Before they left, my husband Jack told me it's my job to take care of her and not to slack off. As soon as Jack and his family left, my sister-in-law, who can't speak, sat up and said we should get going too. My name's Lisa. I'm 29 years old. When I was a teenager, I dreamed of becoming a pop star. But as I got older, I realized it was just a passing dream. And before I knew it, I was in my late 20s. I met Jack through a friend and started dating him because my mom, with whom I live, kept asking when she would see her grandchild. Jack once dreamed of being in the entertainment industry too, but now he works at a big company in downtown Manhattan. After college, I worked at a bank until I got married and quit. One day, Jack and I visited his parents' house. Jack's younger sister, Lucy, got sick with a fever when she was little. Her mom thought it was just a cold, but when the fever didn't go away, they took her to the doctor. Turns out she had encephalitis from the flu, which left her with brain damage and bedridden. The fever also damaged the part of her brain that controls speech, so she can't talk. Mostly, it was my mother-in-law who took care of Lucy. For some reason, Lucy and I got along well, and I always looked forward to visiting Jack's family. Since Lucy can't speak, we use sign language to communicate after becoming close. I also naturally learned sign language. One day, I signed to Lucy. "We're like best friends who've known each other forever, aren't we?" She replied, "Yes, we are. Let's stay close friends forever." I said, "Of course we will." However, my mother-in-law, who is quite different from Lucy, was always sarcastic towards me. Jack and I live about a 30-minute drive away from his parents' house. Occasionally, my mother-in-law would drive over unannounced and start nitpicking on me. She'd say things like, "Jackie's shoes are filthy. If a man's shoes are dirty, it reflects poorly on his work. It's your responsibility to keep them clean." She always referred to Jack as Jackie and insisted that I fold the laundry neatly because if I didn't, Jackie will be in a bad mood. The one who raised Jack this way was none other than her. No matter how late Jack got home, I was not allowed to go to bed before him. even if he said it was okay for me to do so. My mother-in-law would say such old-fashioned things. When we were dating and initially after we got married, Jack was very kind and never disagreed with me. For example, if I wasn't feeling well and asked him to have dinner outside, he would readily agree. If I saw a designer bag I liked, he would buy it for me the following month. However, about a year after we got married, Jack started to change, or perhaps he returned to his original self. He started coming home late from work, always reeking of alcohol. On weekends, he claimed work kept him away from home, and he would decline my requests to join him when he occasionally visited his parents' home, which was kind of odd. One day, I decided to confront him about it. "Jack, you've become so distant lately. It feels like you're a completely different person," I said. Jack glared at me and replied, "That's not true. You're overthinking things." I retorted, "I don't think I am. You barely talk to me anymore." He told me to stop bringing it up and walked away to take a shower, ending the conversation. One day, Jack surprised me by saying, "This Sunday, I'm going home. What are you going to do?" Jack surprised me with this question, as he had always refused my company on such visits before. "Wait, I can come with you this time," I asked. He replied, "That's why I'm asking." "Well, of course I'll come then. I like to see Lucy too," I added. Jack frowned a bit and said, "You and Lucy seem to get along really well, huh?" "Yes, we do. It feels like we've been best friends forever," I responded, noticing Jack's slight grimace at my words. On Sunday, I drove us to Jack's family home in Nebraska. We stopped at a bakery along the way to buy some pastries as a gift. Jack's mother always frowned when she saw me, but she would light up upon receiving the pastries. When we arrived, his mother came to greet us as usual, but she frowned at my sight, almost as if she was not happy to see me. "Mother-in-law, please have some of these," I said, handing her the pastries. She snatched them from me and peered inside before replying, "Is it these pastries again? They're getting boring, but since you insist, I'll have them." Her face lit up like a child receiving a toy. "Is father around today?" Jack asked. Jack's father was elderly but still worked actively. "He's out at a meeting." "Why, did you need something?" she asked. "No, not really. I just had something I wanted to talk about with him," he replied. I hadn't heard anything about this from Jack. "What's going on? Did you have something to tell your father?" I asked. "It's none of your business," Jack responded. "What do you mean? We're a married couple, aren't we? Can you just stop nagging?" Jack retorted, to which his mother added, "Exactly. If Jack doesn't want to tell you something, you shouldn't be prying." I decided not to respond, knowing that arguing with her would be fruitless. Just then, Jack's sister appeared. "Oh, Jack, you're here," she said. "Sis, perfect timing. I have something to discuss," Jack started. "What is it?" she asked. "I can take a long vacation next month. I was thinking about a family trip to Hawaii." "How about you, sis?" Jack proposed. "I'll pass." "I don't have a passport," she replied. I was taken aback. Jack, who was always busy with work and rarely took time off, was suggesting a trip to Hawaii. "Jack, is everything all right with your job?" "I'm only suggesting this trip because my work's going fine," Jack explained. My mother-in-law seemed displeased with my interference in Jack's business. Frowning deeply, she said to me, "You shouldn't meddle with decisions Jack has made. You're really nosy, aren't you?" "That's right. And Lisa, the reason I asked you here today is because I want you to take care of Lucy during the time we're on vacation." Jack's mother continued. I was momentarily taken aback, but then I realized that staying here with Lucy would be much more enjoyable than going on a trip to Hawaii with my mother-in-law. "Okay, I will take care of Lucy. But if that was the case, you didn't need to bring me all the way here to tell me that, did you?" I said. "I figured if I told you in front of my mother, you'd understand quicker," Jack replied. He must have assumed I'd resist when I found out I couldn't go to Hawaii. And if I did, he wanted my mother-in-law to forcefully convince me. It was clear to me that this was his intent. I was left feeling dumbfounded and left the room to head to Lucy's room. Lucy looked delighted to see me. "It's been a while. How have you been?" I asked. "I'm good. "What brings you here today?" "Jack asked me to come with him to our parents' house, so I did. But it's strange. Before, whenever Jack came here, he used to tell me I couldn't come along. My brother is definitely hiding something. He's always been secretive. So apparently he's going to Hawaii next month, but I'll be staying back. I think that's better though," I said with a smile. Lucy also replied with a grin. "In that case, you should come over and stay here." "Sure, I'll do that." After that, Lucy and I had a great time chatting. I always wondered why Lucy and my mother-in-law were so different. About an hour later, Jack came to get me, and we headed home. At that time, Lucy gave me a slight wink. She revealed a shocking truth and an even more shocking plan to me. A month later, on the day of the Hawaii trip, Jack and I went to his parents' house. Although I wasn't going to Hawaii, I brought my luggage to stay at my in-laws for a week with Lucy. When I returned to the living room, everyone going to Hawaii was already there. It seemed that Jack's father wasn't going, as he wasn't present. As the departure time neared, the entire family, with Jack's voice rising above the rest, chimed in, "Taking care of Lucy is your job. Don't slack off." Even my mother-in-law added, "Please get along well with Lucy. It's better for you to stay here, isn't it? If anything happens to Lucy, it's all your fault. We'll hold you responsible." It was absurd for someone who was about to abandon their immobile sister for a vacation in Hawaii to say these words, but I did not react at all. It didn't matter what Jack said. I wasn't in the mood to see them off. So I went back to Lucy's room. Right then, Lucy sprang up energetically from her bed and called out to me, "Come on, let's get going." It echoed a recent conversation we had when Lucy confessed, "You know, I could actually walk," and with walking came the ability to converse. "Since when?" I asked. "Since last year, I suppose. Why have you been hiding this from the rest of the family?" Lucy began sharing an unexpected tale. "Actually, my father and mother are both remarried. I'm my dad's child from his previous marriage, and my sister and brother are from my mom's side." I was surprised, but considering how distant and cold my mother-in-law usually was towards Lucy, I couldn't help but think, "I thought so. Is that so?" Lucy confirmed, "Yeah, my mom despises me, and I didn't want to talk to her, so I pretended that I couldn't." "And your father?" I inquired. "Dad knows everything. He's always on my side." Lucy explained, "That's why, regarding this trip to Hawaii, I'm thinking we should go to." I was puzzled, "What do you mean?" Lucy clarified, "I mean, I'm planning to go to Hawaii on the same day with you. We'll even stay at the same resort." Lucy said this with a sparkle in her eye, catching me completely off guard. "I'd be thrilled to go to Hawaii with you, Lucy. But do you even have a passport?" Lucy reassured me, "Of course, I secretly got my passport last month. And don't worry about the expenses. My dad is covering our plane tickets and the resort, including yours." I see. I'm really looking forward to this. That's how we ended up at the airport today. When Lucy and I arrived, my father-in-law was there waiting to see us off. He greeted me, "Lisa, it's been a while. I know it must be surprising, but I hope you enjoy the trip to Hawaii." "Thank you, father-in-law. I feel guilty for all the plane tickets and resort fees you've covered." He reassured me, "Don't worry about it. As long as you two have fun, I'm happy." I thanked him for his kindness. After that, we boarded a plane from a different airline than my husband's family. We landed in Hawaii early in the morning, took a taxi from the airport, and checked into the resort hotel. Lucy and I were sharing a room. I mentioned to Lucy, "Your father seems pretty well traveled." Lucy confirmed, "Yeah, he's been on several international business trips. He's even been to Hawaii a few times." "So what's the plan?" "I'm guessing my mom and everyone will dine at the restaurant here tonight. I'm thinking of surprising them." Lucy suggested, "That sounds like fun. I'm excited. Should we get some rest to recover from getting jet-lagged?" "That sounds like a good idea." I couldn't sleep at all on the plane. After taking a shower, we climbed into bed and quickly fell asleep. We woke up around late afternoon, close to 4 o'clock. Lucy was already awake, starting to wear makeup. "I'm sorry I slept too much," I said. "No, don't worry about it. I just woke up too. We really had a good sleep, didn't we? Fully recharged and ready for our battle, Lucy replied. Around 7 o'clock, I said to Lucy, I'll go and see at Chuck, the restaurant. As I was looking for Jack and his party from the shadows near the entrance of the restaurant, I found them dining joyfully in a far-off spot. I was too far away from them, so I decided to venture deeper into the restaurant. From my position, all I could see was their backs, and it was hard to identify anyone. But I spotted the back of a young woman that I didn't recognize. There wasn't any such woman when they had left Jack's parents' house. Upon seeing this, I was taken aback, nearly letting out a loud gasp, but I managed to suppress it. When I strained my ears, I could intermittently hear Jack and my mother-in-law's voices. I'm glad it's not that woman today, Jack said. Yeah, I really drew the short straw. She's tainted my family record. If only we had an elegant daughter like her from the start. I want to divorce her and start fresh soon. Try to find a reason for the divorce and extract a hefty alimony from that woman. Even without a cause for the divorce, it's fine. I can fabricate as many as I want. She's so bad that I want to throw her in the trash. I want to see my grandchild from you and her soon, my mother-in-law said to the woman with a smile that she had never shown me before. I was driven by the urge to step forward and confront the woman, but I held it in. I returned to my room and told Lucy that it took a while. I'm sorry. I saw something shocking. Jack brought a woman that I've never seen before, I explained. What? Lucy was surprised. I was about to scream. Jack and my mother-in-law were continuously bad-mouthing me, and Jack even said he would find a reason for divorce. That's terrible. Jack called me a bad catch, but seeing him with another woman, I felt relieved. Now I can divorce him outright. That's a good thing. Shall we make our entrance then? Lucy suggested. Lucy and I headed towards the restaurant hall. When we entered the restaurant, we requested to sit near Jack's table and were able to get a seat quite close to them. They didn't notice our arrival, and as we were sitting quite close, we could hear their conversation well, which was still filled with derogatory comments about me. I was amazed and ended up giving a bitter smile at how they could badmouth me indefinitely. Seeing my face, Lucy gave a nod with a smile, which was a cue for us to begin our counterattack. I stood up from my seat, stepped forward towards Jack, and shouted, "Are you all having a good time?" I'll never forget the look on Jack and my mother-in-law's faces at that moment. Their mouths agape, eyes wide open, they froze for a few seconds. After a few seconds, my mother-in-law finally spoke. "Why are you here? And how did Lucy get here without a wheelchair?" At her words, Lucy stood up, gave my mother-in-law a smile, and said, "I don't need a wheelchair. Thanks to you, my body and speech have returned to normal. I must have caused you quite a bit of trouble for a long time." "When did you regain your ability to speak?" my mother-in-law asked. "I wonder when that was. Maybe last year," Lucy replied calmly. "Then why did you hide it until now?" my mother-in-law questioned. "Because it was better if you guys continued to believe that I couldn't speak. You and Jack were speaking ill of me earlier, weren't you?" Lucy's revelation made my mother-in-law's face turn pale in an instant. "What do you mean?" she asked. "Yeah, we weren't saying anything bad about you, Lisa," Jack retorted. "That won't work. I recorded everything on my phone. Do you want me to play it back right now?" I countered. My mother-in-law fell silent, but Jack stood up, barking, "Lisa, you've been causing me trouble all this time, and now you're making these outrageous claims." Jack's accusations only fueled my resolve. Once I return back home, I'll immediately contact my lawyer to initiate our divorce procedure. You can't deny the fact that you're on a vacation abroad with another woman. Plus, you described getting with me as drawing a blank lottery ticket, so I expect you to demonstrate sincerity by paying a hefty compensation for that comment, I declared. At my words, my mother-in-law seemed to acknowledge her defeat, and her attitude abruptly changed. "Lisa, dear, I really like you. Please try to get along with Jack." "This woman is not involved with Jack," she pleaded. "I'm sorry, but I can't do that. Since I am a blank lottery ticket, I cannot live with Jack. Please enjoy your time with this woman. Oh, and I might also seek compensation from her. Isn't that exciting?" I smirked. The woman in question turned pale and began to tremble upon hearing my words. Unfazed by the public gaze, Jack fell to his knees and pleaded, "Lisa, I beg you, don't make this a big deal. My company has strict rules about this." But I remained firm. "I will never forgive you. You are married, and yet here you are on an overseas trip with another woman," I said firmly. Upon hearing my words, my mother-in-law also fell to her knees next to Jack, pleading, "Please forgive my son," tears streaming down her face. By this time, all the other customers were watching us, and the restaurant manager started walking towards our table. Seeing this, I got up and said, "Well, Lucy and I will head back to our room. You all enjoy your Hawaiian vacation. I guess things will get a bit difficult when you get back home." Jack cried out, shouting at the top of his lungs, "Please forgive me. I can't afford to pay any compensation." At his loud outburst, the restaurant manager frowned, instructed something to a nearby staff member, and then briskly told Jack something. It was a polite way of telling him that he was disturbing the other guests and needed to leave. However, Jack was taken aback, not understanding the manager's words. Soon, 2 buffed-up security guards arrived and hauled Jack away. Jack was sobbing and struggling, but he was no match for the 2 bulky men. My mother-in-law and the woman were dumbfounded, unable to utter a word, while Lucy and I were also surprised by the turned events. I thought Jack got what he deserved. A week later, Lucy and I returned home. Jack was quickly released and seemed to have returned to his room. However, I later heard that he had been in a state of shock since returning to his room and had kept to himself until the end of the trip. The day after I returned home, I went to the law firm where my old college friend worked to request a divorce proceeding. Unfortunately, my friend was not present, but a female lawyer was assigned to me. She was very easy to talk to, and I was able to explain everything that had happened. After listening to my story, she assured me that a divorce was possible, that I could claim alimony, and that she would investigate the woman who was with Jack in Hawaii before determining whether I could claim alimony from her as well. A month later, the female lawyer contacted me and informed me that it had been proved that Jack had been dating the other woman for about 6 months. Hence, she said it was possible for me to demand alimony from this woman too. I requested the female lawyer, "Please squeeze as much alimony as you can from Jack and his woman." She smiled and nodded. 2 months later, I was officially divorced, and into my bank account was deposited the alimony from the 2. I mumbled as I saw the amount, and that's karma for calling me a blank lottery ticket. 3 months later, Jack and my mother-in-law suddenly visited my place. Despite it being only 3 months, they had lost a lot of weight and looked completely haggard. I asked them, "What do you want?" "I don't want to see your faces." Jack replied in a thin voice, "I'm sorry. Could you lend me some money? I've lost my job." And the woman ran away. "I don't even have money for food." My mother-in-law also spoke in a whisper, "I've divorced my husband too. I don't have money. Please, I beg you." My mother-in-law was in tears. I responded, "Too bad. I have absolutely no obligation to help you, and even if I did, I would never help you guys out. Now please leave." After they left, I sprinkled a large amount of salt at my entrance to get rid of bad energy from my house. Yesterday, you overheard our conversation, didn't you? My eldest son and his wife are returning home for the birth of their child. Consequently, I need you to clear your belongings out to the yard. Excuse me, but you can't have kids anyway, and you don't contribute to my son's work. The least you could do is make some room, especially since I'm paying $10,000 in rent. This situation is becoming too tiresome to deal with. I'm currently living with my mother-in-law, but she now wants me out of the house because my brother-in-law and his wife are returning. With my mother-in-law, brother-in-law, his wife, and my husband, this house is full of problems. I've been trying to maintain a smooth household, but it's becoming a hassle to think about it all. I'm done thinking. Okay, I'll leave, but I can't just put my belongings in the yard, so I'll come back later to pick them up. You're leaving? Thank you. That's a big help. Ignoring my pleas, my mother-in-law, I started packing my things and left the house. 7 seconds after stepping out the door, I took out my phone and called a junk removal service. Once I stopped thinking, no one could stop my actions. I'm Linda, a 40-year-old egg consultant. My husband, Mark, also 40, runs 3 restaurants as a sole proprietor. Although people often assume we've been married for a long time with kids, we're actually newlyweds. We both lived as workaholics and only married at this age. I had given up on marriage just before turning 40, but a random visit to a bar after work changed my mind. "Is this your first time here?" Mark asked with a smile as I sat at the end of the bar. I had been curious about the place for a while, and this time I decided to go in as a reward to myself for working hard. Mark assured me that many women come alone, and I felt comfortable as a loner at the counter. I became a regular, always sitting at the end of the bar, and it became normal for Mark to chat with me while I ate. I'm always busy with work, and I can't talk much. How about we go out for dinner sometime? Excited about the chance to dine with a restaurateur, I eagerly agreed. Our conversation slowly drew me to Mark's dedication to his work, and he grew fond of me seeing that I was a hardworking person. We started dating, and 2 years later, as we both turned 40, we decided to get married. Feeling shy about being a bride at 40, I asked my husband to skip the wedding ceremony, and we just took some photos of us dressed up. After getting married, I moved from my apartment to my husband's 3-story house with a garden and parking in a high-end area where the rent is around $1,000. Living with my 70-year-old mother-in-law seemed necessary, given the circumstances. I immediately agreed, but after moving in with my mother-in-law, I regretted accepting so quickly. When I settled into my husband's house, I realized it was too big for just the 2 of us. In addition to our bedroom, I had a lavish office room for myself, and there were many spare rooms. Curious, I asked my husband a simple question: why do we need such a big house just for you and your mother? My husband explained that he has a brother 3 years older than him who left home after college, and they've lost touch. He hasn't been home for a few years, and my husband anticipates that one day he might return, which prompted them to rent a bigger house. I expressed my opinion that it might be a little too big. "Well, I got married and you came, so I guess it all worked out," my husband said with a smile as he unpacked my books and arranged them on the shelf. He shared stories about his brother Daniel, who seemed to be hopping from job to job. Despite his brother's situation, my husband didn't harbor negative feelings towards him. "Don't talk about that kid. What if he really comes back?" My mother-in-law appeared at the doorway of what would be my office, seemingly checking on us. It was clear she didn't have a good opinion of him, unlike my husband. I worried that conflicts might arise between my husband and mother-in-law regarding his brother someday. "I'm not too fond of you either, Mom." "Come on, we're going to live together now, so stop saying things like that," I said. My mother-in-law walked away, and my husband apologized, assuring me he would talk to her. I told him it's okay. I had a similar talk when we met for the wedding. "I'll build a relationship with your mother as we live together," I assured him, taking a book from his paused hands and placing it on the shelf. It seemed she didn't like my age. Being 40 makes it challenging to have children, and my mother-in-law probably wished Mark had married someone younger. Once the move was complete and our married life officially began, my mother-in-law's coldness towards me became evident. While there was no harassment or physical violence, she ignored or avoided me as much as possible. It felt a bit lonely, but I decided to consider it okay for now and hope to build a relationship with her over time. More pressing was my concern for Mark. "Are you okay with your work?" I asked him. "No, it's pretty bad. I need to take action soon, but it's tough to arrange the finances," Mark replied, sitting at the dining table with his head in his hands. I abandoned the dishes and settled in front of him, eager to listen. "These are tough times," Mark began, his voice heavy with concern. "Prices are soaring, expenses climbing, and customers are tightening their wallets. There's no end in sight. If this keeps up, I might have to close another one of our stores." About a year into our marriage, the situation at Mark's restaurants worsened. One of the 3 stores had already closed, and it seemed another might follow suit. Seeing Mark's troubled face weighed heavily on me, but my mother-in-law appeared unfazed by these challenges. "You're Mark's wife, but you don't help out at the store. You just do your own job. Can you really say you're fulfilling your role as a wife?" My mother-in-law's voice cut through the air from the living room, having overheard our conversation. I wondered what she was thinking, but she had her own perspective. Mark has been running his own restaurant for nearly 10 years, overcoming various challenges. I believe he'll pull through this time too. You, his wife, shouldn't be making that face. Are you trying to feed into his anxiety and make him fail? "What a terrible wife," she shouted again, her words dripping with spite and venom. I knew she wasn't simply trying to provoke me, but there was some truth in her words. Taking her words positively, I resolved to support Mark to the fullest, smiling reassuringly at my anxious husband. A year later, just as she said, Mark managed to turn the situation around and avoided closing a second store. "See, I told you," I said to my mother-in-law. "A stupid wife who can't even trust her husband. Don't drag Mark down," she replied, lashing out at me without reservation. Though our relationship seemed strained, since Mark's business was doing well, I considered it a break-even situation. However, things took a turn for the worse. Mark, having stabilized the business and with some extra money, seemed to get carried away, and rumors of his affair surfaced. I couldn't fathom what he was thinking. Surely there were better ways to spend the money. It's peculiar how bad situations tend to pile up. Having witnessed Mark's business revenue drop, I understood this all too well, but I never imagined it would happen to me. Then Daniel called, my brother. Yes, Daniel, a freelancer, and his pregnant girlfriend, who worked at the same bar as Mark. They asked if they could move into our house and if they could work at Mark's restaurant. As I pondered how to address Mark about the affair from the dining room, my mother-in-law entered the living room and engaged him in conversation. They discussed Daniel, whom I had never met, and I felt completely sidelined as they continued their discussion. It was a peculiar scene. My mother-in-law, who used to resent Daniel for not fulfilling his role as the eldest son, was now urging Mark to welcome him. The reason was straightforward: the prospect of a grandchild. She had previously given up hope of seeing one, but now perceived an opportunity and had a change of heart. She even planned to offer them a home and jobs. Mark, who had always been supportive of Daniel, had rented this large house for such an occasion. However, circumstances had shifted, and I found myself caught in the middle. It struck me as odd to have Daniel and his family move in. I glanced at Mark from the dining area, and he returned my gaze with a troubled expression. Come on, it's a good thing. Daniel is in trouble, and you, Mark, have the means to help him, my mother-in-law said, pressing him. Mark seemed unable to refuse his mother's request, and I couldn't help but feel disappointed. I had hoped he would stand up to her, but it seemed like wishful thinking. He kept glancing at me, likely concerned about my reaction. With the deteriorating relationship with my mother-in-law, Mark's affair, and now the prospect of living with Daniel and his family, the problems were mounting. Overwhelmed and unsure where to begin, I decided to abandon my thoughts for the day and simply go to sleep. The next day, a holiday and likely due to extreme mental fatigue, I slept in until late morning. Mark was at work, leaving just my mother-in-law and me at home. As I reluctantly made my way to the living room, I dreaded what she might say about my late awakening. You sure slept in. Must be nice to have such leisure, she remarked, surpassing my expectations. She then informed me about Daniel and his wife's impending visit for maternity leave. So move your stuff out to the yard. Excuse me? I questioned, still groggy from sleep. She clarified that I should vacate to make room for Daniel and his family, citing my inability to have children and lack of contribution to Mark's work. I was taken aback. It seemed she was indeed asking me to leave the house. Realizing that my presence was now deemed unnecessary, I decided it was too much trouble to fret over Mark, my mother-in-law, Daniel's family, and our future. Understood, I'll leave, I declared. I can't put all my belongings in the yard, so I'll come back later to pick them up. Ignoring my words, my mother-in-law expressed gratitude and I began packing my things, leaving the house 7 seconds after stepping out the door. I grabbed my phone and dialed a junk removal service, my decision firm and resolute after putting an end to my overthinking. No one could sway me now. Let them all come to regret this choice later. Departing from the house, I opted to stay at a hotel temporarily. Although I had arranged for the removal service, they required some time to prepare. This aligned perfectly with my desire for some time alone. 2 weeks after leaving, I secured an apartment and began living independently. Since then, I hadn't heard from Mark, who probably believed I'd eventually return. The idea of Mark taking the current situation lightly infuriated me. However, today marked the day after his restaurant's day off, and I anticipated a call from Mark when he visited the restaurant for lunch prep. "What's going on here? The restaurant is completely empty," Mark exclaimed over the phone, confirming my expectations. Just as I thought, I chuckled and replied, "Mark, I could explain over the phone, but it would be more efficient if your mom was there too. I'm heading to the house now. Can you come back? You could open the restaurant anyway, right?" Unable to contain my laughter, I hung up, amused by Mark's reaction. He must be quite shocked. Still chuckling, I began preparing to leave. Upon arriving at the house, my mother-in-law immediately started yelling at me. Mark had apparently explained part of the situation. An unfamiliar couple, Daniel and his wife, were in the living room, looking confused and anxious, not fully grasping the situation amid my mother-in-law's extreme anger. "Why would you do such a thing? The restaurant can't operate now," she continued to scold. I countered, stating that it was my restaurant, and there shouldn't be a problem with me starting the closing process or having the items I bought disposed of by a junk removal service. "Huh, your restaurant? What are you talking about? Why don't you explain, Mark? You haven't told your mom, have you?" I challenged. Mark hesitated but confessed, admitting that I had paid for the expenses to turn around his struggling second restaurant branch. Hearing this, my mother-in-law looked perplexed, trying hard to understand but lacking the full information. Mark continued, uncomfortable and holding back, so I decided to step in and clarify. Before turning 40, I was single and working in ad consulting, with no wedding ceremony or new house purchase after marriage. I had saved up a significant amount of money. I lent Mark $200,000 to help revitalize his second restaurant branch, subsequently buying the rights to become its owner. I explained that I left most of the management to Mark, shifting his focus from the main branch to the second for its recovery. When Mark's restaurant was in crisis, I showed my concern alongside him. It was during a moment when my mother-in-law criticized me for not showing enough trust in my husband that I decided to support Mark to the fullest. My form of support was providing him with the necessary funds. During my single years, I had diligently saved money. "Mark, is this true?" My mother-in-law asked incredulously. "Yes, it's true," Mark admitted. She seemed surprisingly okay with it, even if I failed and squandered the $200,000 she had given me. Given the sizable amount, she suggested that if it was destined to fail anyway, it might be simpler for me to become the owner. The plan was to repay the borrowed $200,000 from the restaurant's earnings, but it was more straightforward for me to become the owner, with the restaurant's income going directly to me. Additionally, it afforded me the authority to decide whether to keep the restaurant open or not. It's a lie. Can something like that really happen? My mother-in-law exclaimed. To provide evidence, I spread documents like the business license transfer, rights agreement, and lease agreement on the table, proving my ownership of the restaurant. As she confirmed my name on those documents, her face turned red with shock. "Why didn't you say anything about this? You always talked about how you believed in Mark and how the restaurant was recovering, right?" she demanded. Mark explained that he felt pressured by her words, always striving to live up to her expectations. He didn't want to disappoint her, so he couldn't bring himself to reveal that he had borrowed a large sum of money from me. He feared her reaction, knowing how easily upset she could be. People like my mother-in-law often don't realize the pressure they put on others, and Mark found it challenging to express himself under her constant scrutiny. It was crucial not to let Mark's spirit break under her constant jabs. especially when the restaurant was finally turning around. That's why I kept quiet too. Mark and my mother-in-law apologized, and it seemed like everything was being resolved amicably. However, it was far from satisfactory for me, and the discussion was far from over. I handed Mark a divorce paper, shocking him. He assumed it was a reconciliation, but I knew about his affair with a part-timer, and the other part-time workers were aware of it too. Mark was taken aback, claiming it was just a rumor, but I presented evidence, a photo sent by a part-time worker showing Mark entering a hotel. While anyone could fabricate such evidence, it was undeniable. The success of the second branch had given him too much confidence, and he had gotten carried away. The resolution wasn't as simple as reconciliation. It required deeper discussions and decisions to be made. I reflected on my role as the restaurant owner, acknowledging that while I couldn't handle day-to-day operations, I made occasional visits to stay connected. The part-time workers, having learned about Mark's affair, sought my assistance. With their unwavering support, they provided evidence and kept the impending closure of the restaurant from Mark. My mother-in-law's voice quivered as she confronted the reality of closing the second branch and the impending divorce. The revelation that I had been paying the entire $10,000 monthly rent added another layer of shock. Mark, now burdened with the weight of financial difficulties, faced an uncertain future. As the discussion progressed, Daniel and his wife realized the challenges they would encounter in continuing to live in the house. Daniel pleaded for help, citing their impending parenthood, but the escalating argument underscored the uncertainty surrounding everyone's future. After the divorce, I focused on closing the restaurant, selling equipment to offset expenses. The experience as a restaurant owner proved insightful, reinforcing my commitment to my ad consulting career. With the family dynamics strained, the fallout extended to Mark and his mother, now sharing a small apartment with strained communication. The resolution brought both closure and uncertainty. The exposure of Mark's affair and the revelation of true ownership exposed familial fractures. The decision to close the restaurant added financial stress, and the introduction of divorce papers signaled a decisive move by me to take control of my life. The aftermath left strained relationships, financial uncertainty, and an uncertain future for everyone involved. The emotional toll of the conflicts was palpable, and the story closes with a sense of closure for some aspects but leaves lingering questions about the characters' futures and their ability to rebuild after the storm. The resolution, while providing clarity, marks the beginning of a new chapter as each character navigates the